Okay. Hello? Someone there? I don't have a mic. Do you see the chat area on the right hand side? Hello? Someone there? I don't have a mic. Do you see the chat area on the right hand side? Hello? Someone there? I see Irish. Can you hear me? Okay, great. You don't have a mic, that's fine. I wonder if Steven's on. I see that there's 2 viewers. Are you logged in somewhere else? Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm just going to go over a few things, and if you have questions, stop me, and I will answer those questions. So, and I'm actually recording this, and I will post it so that you can have access to it later, as well as the rest of the team. So, I was going to do an introduction, but since no one is here but you, that's okay. Tell me exactly what school are you attending, where you're located, what's your year you're attending in school, as well as I'm guessing you're a computer science major, and you can just type it in the chat area, Irish. Did you hear that the last question? Okay. Yes, I heard it. Okay, so go ahead and put all those answers in the chat area, and I'll keep going. I'm going to actually review the requirements, and let me know if you have the requirements document. It's actually on GitHub. Let me give you the link. I will post the link in the chat area so that you can actually look at it while we're reviewing. And what I'll do is actually share my screen as well because I have it open. Which one is it? Here it is. All right, here we go. Right. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to go over some of the, let me tell you the challenge first that we have, as well as what I'm looking for. So Anita Borg Institute, we have a lot of volunteers that help us run our programs. I mean, we really could not do it unless we had our volunteers involved. Oftentimes, we have volunteers that volunteer for our events, like our annual Grace Hopper conference, as well as Google Summer of Code, as well as any open source project that we have, meetups, organizing meetups. So at any given time during a year, we probably have, like currently right now, it's probably 300 volunteers that we have. And I have plenty of those. I think probably 100 to 150 of the 300 right now currently are volunteering for Sisters or our communities. And additionally, our volunteers are actually community leaders as well. They do a lot of activities and volunteer their time. Now, we've actually been using our spreadsheet to actually track our volunteers as well as track their time, what event they volunteered at. So a lot of logistic information that we have to track. Currently, all of the project managers actually does this in a spreadsheet. So then at the end of the year when we're reporting out, we all actually have to work really hard and closely together to make sure that we bring and funnel all of those volunteers into one spreadsheet. And that's really a lot of manual labor for us. A lot of time, and reconciling those hours is very critical. One of the most criticals is actually reporting out, because we have to really keep track of the number of hours a volunteer puts in, works, as well as when and what event. Reason being is because a lot of our volunteers, the companies that they work for will actually match the volunteer hours. Maybe they have a specific dollar amount that they will contribute to the organization, so that actually is coming back to ABI. So let's say that if an organization if the company that they work for is offering $10 for every hour that they volunteer, they internally have to submit that to their company. Let's say that Karen, volunteer A, she actually volunteered 10 hours, so that is $100 that her company would actually submit to ABI, donate to ABI. Now, I'm reviewing this current process, and let me just check in with you, Irish. Can you see my screen? Do you see the PDF that's on the screen right now? I should have asked that earlier. Just let me know yes or no. I just want to make sure that you actually see my screen. So this is the actual process that we have to, and it's a very manual process. And currently, right now, the process is that organizations contact ABI. We confirm the volunteers' hours, and then the confirmation goes directly to our operations department, and then the operations department has to go through all of the PMs to kind of confirm the hours, to get that approval for the hours, and then it goes back to the operations, then it goes back to the organization. So that three-step could potentially be, if I wasn't here to report out, then we would definitely miss the donations from that organization. And definitely the organization has time limits and deadlines that they have to do within their own process. So that was one. We're not meeting, we're not doing a lot of the automated steps that we should and could be doing. Secondly, I'm going to move on. This is actually one of just the scenario that I actually talked about. So volunteer enters in their hours internally wherever their organization is, who they're working for, and then the company actually, whoever is their volunteer management, they actually call ABI Finance to confirm the hours. Then they check with me. I check my trusty little spreadsheet for the hours. I go back and say, yes, they actually work. Those hours are approved. Then it goes back to our finance and so on, and then they do a matching donation. And those steps are all manual steps. And that is the reason why we actually are in dire need of a volunteer management systems. So what I am proposing for this particular project is the new process is your organizations can actually come through. We can have somehow enter in organizations that we work with, partner with, sponsors, and our ABI Finance can actually just run a report to confirm all of that. So we're missing all of those steps. We're eliminating all of those steps, excuse me, that you saw previously. And so when the organization contacts ABI, our finance department can actually just run the report from our VMS and confirm. That's a lot of steps that we have reduced as well as eliminated from the entire process. So the very high-level functional requirements that I'm going to go over right now is the 3 different use cases, okay? Administrator, from a user perspective of administrator, a user or volunteer in this case, and then reporting. There are specific tasks and things that we need to do from those 3 particular use case scenarios, okay? I'm not going to go through each one of these administrative tasks that we want. You can read the entire document. But what I really want to be able to do is the reporting feature. These are basic, enter in a volunteer contact information or view a volunteer contact information. However, we also want to be able to allow the users to enter in their own volunteer contact information. So we want to be able to allow users to come to the VMS, our volunteer management system, create an account, put in the contact information as well as any other pertinent information. And we'll go over that a little bit later. What is pertinent information? Maybe they have some skills or something that we definitely need. But we want to be able to, like I said, match a volunteer and track their hours at their work. To be honest, full basic. I want to be able to have the volunteers enter in their information and enter in the hours that they work and for what event. That's it. If we can get that basic functionality working, that will help me and the rest of our staff as well. Yes, we're actually in the process of upgrading a lot of our systems as well. So we are a nonprofit, we are growing, we recognize that we have a lot of work to do internally in our systems. And I talked to my VP and said, we have this incredible community of developers and coders, why not have them actually develop the system for us? It could be your code portfolio or something that you can reference on your resume or anything like that, and it's actually a working application that an organization is using. So it benefits everyone that's involved, to be honest. From a volunteer functionality standpoint, again, this is something that we don't have right now. and would eliminate a lot of the manual connecting that we have to do for approval process. So if we can have basic functionality of allowing everybody to create an account, entering in their contact information, and those pertinent information, they could do a resume, they can upload a resume, they could list out some of the skills or some of the roles that they would like to help out. Like we have plenty of different roles, of volunteer roles. Those roles are really an administrative task, so the administrator would be able to create these roles, create these events or volunteer opportunities, and then a volunteer can actually go in and enter in her time that she's worked for a particular event. Something very simple. We do have a volunteer agreement that we want to incorporate in this as well. If you click on that, on the link in the document, it will take you to the appendix at the end of the document, and you can kind of grasp and understand what the ABI Volunteer Management Agreement is. So I'm not going to go into that in detail because you can actually read it. As well as, we want them to allow them to enter and update their volunteer hours. Okay, so let's say that they signed up to volunteer for, and that's another thing. We want them to be able to sign up for something. That will come from the administrator. And that's something, we have, as you all are coding, you're going to definitely need to do a detailed design of what actually you are working on and how you've actually designed it. So we're leaving that design open to you. However, you definitely have to document what you're doing in parallel of your coding. That's going to be crucial, and that's a thing for open source. I mean, nobody wants to do the documentation, but if somebody comes after you to pick up where you left off, then they need to be able to know what you've done and be able to kind of understand and how to pick up and continue the development. So in the last bit, from a volunteer perspective, we definitely want them to update their volunteer hours, but we do want to have some approval when those hours come through the administrator, and this is something you can think about. I only listed an administrator, but what if I had volunteer coordinators that I wanted to assign? And then I'm just thinking about this because as I'm reviewing the requirements, these are features that would really be helpful and useful to the application. So these are basic what I have in the requirements, but as far as what can be done, we can definitely do more. And that's where the communication is. The basics should be done first. The requirements, you have to follow the requirements, deliver what we have detailed in the requirements, and then we can work on additional features. Okay, that's what I really want to clarify there. The last thing and the most important thing is the reporting functionality. So I would like to have a reporting from an administrative point, reports, volunteers, and eventually, if we develop it right, I'm just saying, if we develop this and plan well, we can certainly have like an API or something that our partners or sponsors could potentially request. We remember the manual process. The organization contacts ABI's operation department. Operations then contacts all the ABI program managers and says, hey, did this such and such person actually work these hours at this event? And we have to validate. So if we plan and design correctly, we could have an API in the future, not now, but in the future, to allow organizations to actually submit approval for particular employee hours. So think about that when you're designing. But from a reporting standpoint, we have just two different reporting. One from administrative tasks. We want more control over how we want to deploy. And this, I would like to have configured. If I choose the field to create my own report, that will be correct. There's always going to be some customized report that I will always have to generate. So it'd be great if I have that flexibility to do so. Now, the fourth one in organization volunteers hours. So right now, you know, I just know my volunteers. We all do, right? And we know that company that they're working for. It would be great for us to run a report so that we can say, hey, the Peace Corps actually had so many volunteers working so many hours at this one event. You know, we want to recognize that organization for doing that. And I think that's really important, not just from the company standpoint, but it gives us a huge overview of, you know, who our members are and who our community members are that are really active and engaged with our organization. So having the flexibility to create customized reports from an administrative task standpoint is very helpful. And I put the last one down there as program volunteers hours because each of the programs at ABI, so we have communities, which falls under Sisters and all of our sub-communities, and then we do have a GHC community, but then we also have GHC, which is a program of ABI, and that's actually an event. So that separately has program volunteers for the event as well. And we want to understand, like the GHC communities, how is the GHC communities, and that's okay. If you can, it's up on Irish. It's up on the GitHub, and I already posted that link above. Do you see the link? And you can just follow along. I'm actually on page. What page am I? 7. I'm actually on page 7. It's the actual requirements document. I see your question there. So the program hours is actually, we want to actually be able to track by program the volunteers that are working our special programs. So for administrative tasks, again, if we can have the flexibility to customize our reports, that would be helpful. Volunteers should actually be able to run their own reports too. You get so involved and so engaged and you're busy. You have no idea what you've done over the past years. I mean, if you think about it, how many hours do you spend studying, or how many hours do you spend on just organizing for an event or managing people or what have you? I can guarantee you a lot of us don't even know half the time what we're doing on a regular basis, and do we really sit back and look at the hours that we've done. Why is this so important? Volunteer positions matter to a lot of organizations, and if you noticed on LinkedIn, they have an area where you volunteers. Companies like to see what you're doing. It tells a lot about you. It tells a lot about what's important to you. So this may be something that the volunteers would really love to understand and really highlight in their profile. So we want to be able to give them at least the basic functionality of running their own reports by month or year. I don't think they need to do it by partner or sponsor, but I'll have to update that one. I'm thinking about that. Probably is just a copy from the previous section, but they definitely want to also run reports on city, right? Our Grace Hopper conference is not in the same city. It is always in a different city every year, and that is just so that we can cover the country. We go from east to west coast, east coast, Midwest, Southwest to West Coast all the time, and we take that. We just go a roundabout way, just we just go back and forth, and that just allows people, if we had, like in Baltimore, we haven't had a last year, 2012, where our Grace Hopper conference was in Baltimore. We haven't had one in that region, and so in a very, very long time. And so that was very important for our government, community members who work for government, who work in the Northeast corridor of the U.S. I mean, it allows a lot of the members who don't have the money or funds to actually, travel across the country. And maybe this will be an event in Baltimore was a lot easier for a lot of us to drive. Um, so that is, I don't think they will be running number 2, so I'm going to remove that from the document as well. There is an appendix at the end, so we do have we want to implement a volunteer application, and that we did start on this, but then we thought about this. We really need an online system to kind of manage that, and this is really helpful too, because it'll let you know the type of events that we have where our members and really want to volunteer for. Sisters, we can probably break that down a little bit more, but there's potential for more. And as you are going through your design and going through development, that's where you need to make sure that the requirements are exactly what you are assigned to do. I'm thinking, and then the volunteer agreement is at the end. We actually definitely want to have this available. I haven't thought about this, but we want this to be available also if we're in a PDF form. Maybe mail it back or upload it to their account so that we can at least check that they have signed in a volunteer agreement. Maybe there's an electronic signature that we can use for the online app, for the web application. I'll leave that to you all to design. And that's that's part of software development, and I think this is up to your mentors for your assignment, but I think you can break this down into administrative and users. So one student take administrative tasks, and then from a user case, and then the other from a volunteer. But you've got to get started with, a basic. We want the functionality before we want the little nice and pretty screens. We can always go back to doing a CSS, right? I mean, that's or use a bootstrap that's already there, created. That's easy enough. We want the functionality. So I would suggest creating a basic web page where like a framework for now, and then going back and handling either one of those. And then the reporting, after you've handled the basic, again, the reporting is going to be from the administrative use case as well as the user volunteer use case. And that's about it for the highlight and overview. Irish, do you have any questions? Make sure that you type them in. This is actually going to be recorded, and so I will post it to our channel as well. Just to give everyone an indication, Irish did give me the information that I asked for. Irish is in her 4th year in majoring in computer science at the University of Manitoba, Canada. And I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. So she's done internships with Public Health Agency of Canada, the Government of Manitoba, and she's also worked as a research assistant at her university. Thank you, Irish. I really appreciate that. And that's pretty much high level for the requirements. Again, we want the basic functionality. Reason why this is really something that's really needed and necessary. And you will have access to testers. You know, I'm going to definitely be a tester, but I can certainly bring in other folks to do some testing as well. Let's talk a little bit about GitHub. We started a little bit later, but I want to just show GitHub just a little bit. Let me go back, and I will share my screen here in just a second. Let me share the screen. How do I share my screen? Okay, here we go. Let me choose something. GitHub, Chrome. Here we go. All right, and start screen share. Okay, so you have your. Hopefully, you've already. I think I've assigned all of the teams already. And Stephen and Suzanne, if you are not on this team, is because I don't have a GitHub account, or you don't necessarily have one, but just make sure that you have a code review and you actually have them check in their work, do a pull request, and then check in their work. And I want to do an iterative approach to our development. So, you know, every 2 weeks when they've got something, a good feature together or developed that we can test, let's test that. They're definitely going to do documentation, unit testing on their own, but at the same time, I would love to be a part of that development cycle where we do some initial testing, you know, like a RAD or something like that. It's important that we make sure we come back every now and then. Feel free. I'm on RSC every day, except this week. I'm traveling. Sorry. And so ask those questions. I am your user. I am your client. So how would you approach? You know, how would you actually use me during your development? Think about that in your development process. That's going to be crucial because I don't want to wait until the very end to test something. I'd rather, you know, let's do an iterative approach. Every 2 weeks, I think it's reasonable. Again, make sure you're documenting, make sure the students are documenting as they go along. And they've actually created their own profile page already on our wiki. And I will update the mentors with those as well. So this is so we have, if you visit our Systers GitHub page, all of our repositories are listed by the project, and so VMS is here, and you can actually work and clone only, and we started using GitHub earlier this year, and the reason why is because we had Peace Corps that actually uses GitHub, and that's a little bit different than what we're doing now. The Peace Corps, what I've done on the Peace Corps is, let me go there quickly to show you the process there. So Peace Corps has, let's say, an Android Peace track that they're working on. I have actually done is we have the actual Android Peace track as well. So if I click on that, it's forked from the Peace track Android. What will happen is that the students will only work on the Systers repo. They will only update and do pull and push requests in the Systers repo, and I will be responsible, and I have a couple of other admins as well. We will be responsible for pushing those to Peace Corps. The reason being is because, number one, we want to definitely get to the code review. We want to make sure that the mentors have reviewed the code before we push it. Now, when you actually, you will be referenced in Peace Corps' repo once that is actually pushed and accepted. So don't worry about that. It will track where you're forking from, and then it will also track where you're pushing to. And even though you're pushing to Systers, it will automatically go to Peace Track as well. So the reason why we're using GitHub is because I wanted to kind of manage all of the projects in one area. I'm familiar with GitHub on other open source projects as well, so it was good for me. And believe it or not, all of the students actually had an account on GitHub, so it was quite easy to bring them in as a team. Let's see. So we talked about the requirements. We did the requirements review. We did review the GitHub, the repo, and the development approach. Like I said, it would be, hi, Steven, I see you.
Hi.
And you can play this back.
With the control.
I'm going to remove my, hi, do you see me?
Yeah.
So we went over the functional requirements, and then I showed them the GitHub repos and why we're using the GitHub repos. I just kind of want to manage all of the projects in one area. And then the development approach, I do want to do like an iterative approach. Let's do like every 2 weeks. I don't want to wait until at the very end to test something. I want to be involved and engaged. So I'm the user, because and you can replay this later. But this is really for my organization. We have had so much volunteers come through, and managing them has become very cumbersome. We just each of us actually use a spreadsheet, and we just need a better way of reporting and doing a lot of automated process. So I would really love it if we could come back as a group, as a team, to do some rapid application development and then test it out. I can definitely have available probably 4 or 5 more testers to kind of test the functionality. I'm not really too concerned about making it look pretty. We need the actual functionality. Hey, who's that?
This is Nori.
Hi. She's sleeping. Oh, beautiful. I can't see it. Up, up, up. Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. Oh my gosh. Don't you gotta, this new technology.
He was about to tip the basket.
And that's about it. I mean, Stephen, do you have anything that you want to add? I don't, we can do the prettiness later. I would really love to do the functionality. And I forgot to say one thing, is that I am working on a VM for everyone, and we had events at the organization, so hopefully that will be ready by next week. But we will have a VM for everyone, so everyone can work on their own. We'll have a server and all of that. Again, we'll have everything available next week. I'll get the environment, make sure. We're having a huge event tomorrow, and then we just got sidetracked with all of that. So I know we wanted to talk about, the last thing I think we wanted to talk about was the development approach, what language. And what I mentioned earlier is that if you read some of the functionality, and when you do actually review it, you'll understand. But if we design it correctly. I don't want to, everyone has their own language, and I get that, and they're comfortable with it. And this is an opportunity to learn a new language if they want. But I really think we should do the Python, because I'm thinking of more down the road, and if we design it correctly ahead of time, we could definitely create an API so that some of our partners can push a request or something for volunteer hours or something. I'm thinking about that. Also, we have this other portal project. The portal project is for our communities, but I can certainly see us plugging, maybe having this as an extension of the portal, because ABI uses this, but who says that some of the volunteers, some of the community members, the portal project is a little different, but some of the communities that are using the portal would definitely need volunteers too. You know what I mean? So I've looked around, and we tried a lot of different online volunteer management systems, and it was just cumbersome. It didn't give us what we needed. It didn't do the functionality, and we're talking about very basic functionality. And when you play this recording back over and over later on, you'll understand, because I did go over the requirements pretty hefty. So I really want us to stick to Python in this project. And I'm really thinking about down the road. I'm thinking about maintenance. I'm thinking about plugging things together. So if we design it correctly and build it right, we could do a lot with it down the road. And that's my thinking. So.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that, and with what Iris wrote in her mail about not just Python, but any of the frameworks. I think that makes things a lot more maintainable. I think it makes it a lot easier to integrate with something like an ongoing portal project or Shanu's what was it, messaging interface, I think it was, from last year, and so on. So the question is whether Jayesh will go with that or not.
Yeah, well, it is what it is, and we're definitely thinking about long term. And that reminds me, I mentioned the API, I mentioned the extension to the portal, but this could definitely be a mobile project later on, right? I mean, if I can see people wanting to search for volunteer opportunity at one of our events and sign up for it, and already created an account or whatever and have it on their device, and so that they can volunteer. I mean, we take volunteers based on who comes, first come, first serve oftentimes, and so I can see that happening down the road as a mobile project too. So.
Yeah, I think that's interface, though, isn't it? That's part of being pretty in some sense.
Yeah, it is, and
I've used email itself, not the app, on an iPhone, and it works. It's not pleasant, but you can do it. So.
And I'm glad you said that, because I mentioned this earlier. I really don't care about being pretty. We can always go back and make it pretty, do a CSS file, or get a bootstrap that's already there. I'm interested in the functionality. I think I'm just going to lose my mind if I have to continue on the way I've been continuing on with the spreadsheet. I mean, we're growing, and we're getting more and more volunteers, so. That's my thinking. I agree with you, and I'm glad you mentioned that, is that I don't, make it look decent for us to test, but the functionality, that's what we want. And we can always go back and make it look pretty.
The first time I saw the video on your email, I clicked on it, but I guess I missed or something because it didn't move, so I thought that was the Hangout itself. So I haven't actually looked at the video, but to what extent is the volunteer management system involved in scheduling volunteers?
That is probably like a future request or a future enhancement. I would love to be able to provide or enter in volunteer opportunities, and then actually have the volunteers themselves sign themselves up, and that's what you're thinking, right? That's what you're asking. I found this site, and I just posted it in the group chat there on the right-hand side. It's called Volunteer Spot. The one thing I hated about this thing is that, yes, I could actually create a volunteer assignment, but I couldn't duplicate it or replicate it. So if I need 10 people for this same one, I would have to re-enter that thing every single time. And I was like, there's no way. I mean, I have over 100 opportunities at sometimes. I can't re-enter that thing ever 100 times. So I would love for be able to create a volunteer opportunity and then have the volunteer uh, schedule themselves or sign up. We always say sign up because really we really want the volunteers to be engaged, and if we give them a little bit more control, they are more apt to step up. So that's what I'm thinking. But if yeah, and we can also, and you know, from an administrative standpoint, we should be able to do all, right? Both from a user perspective, sign someone up and then just create the opportunity, or create the opportunity and have them sign themselves up. So if you even just look at this volunteer spot, it's great for what it is, but sometimes it's not enough for what I need. I can't enter an opportunity or an assignment 100 times. There should be a replication. And those little things like that you just asked me, those features, that's why I want the iterative approach of every 2 weeks so that we can come back and readdress it. Maybe I was just off my rocker. Maybe I'm just so tired and I don't know what I'm thinking right now, but I'd love the opportunity to come back and, you know, revisit that. Okay. Anything else? Irish, don't forget. Irish doesn't have a mic, so she's been typing in her question.
Okay.
Yeah. So, anything else, Stephen? How are you there? I really appreciate you joining.
I'm doing fine. It's just after 1 now in the afternoon.
Good. Not that
And the
bad.
dog's been walked, and I'm happy. And
Good.
over at Mailman, we're worrying about DMARC, of course.
You know, I'm so glad. Okay, Irish, can I just vent here for a minute? So while I have your attention, we actually, you know, DMARC came out early February or something like that, but then a couple of days after, you know, Heartbleed came out, so everybody forgot about it. So earlier, probably in April, we had the DMARC problem. And so I've been working with OSL, and they helped me because some of the you know, we have like 4,700 members, and then we only had like 100 that was disabled account. So we actually got all of those resolved, and they did tweak it for us. But you know, we have such a customized version of Mailman that it wasn't such an easy fix. He found somebody who did a fix and tried to implement it, but you know, we have a customized fix. Customized version, and it's not readily putting in. So I'm still thinking that I would love to have the latest. I just saw where you all had released the latest 118, and I still want that one. I mean, what is the status for the DMARC right now? I mean,
right now we have several strategies that are available for dealing with DMARC. One strategy is very simple. You just wrap every message as if it were a digest.
Mm-hmm.
This can be done either for all messages on a given list. It's per list. This can either be done for all messages on a list, or it can be done by checking the DNS to see if they have a DMARC reject policy, which is what causes the problems. So you can do that either way. There's another policy that you can implement by checking a box, which is to switch the Yahoo or AOL user out of from and into reply to, so that you can do a personal reply, and then put the list in the from address. this is what the DMARC people themselves recommend. I hate it. Barry doesn't like it. Mark hates it, but it does work.
Okay.
And then there are a couple of other possibilities, but those are the main ones, and they actually work very well to address the problem of bounces from DMARC.
Okay. You know, so we had a lot of Comcast and Yahoo, and a few Hotmail too, which is surprising. We didn't have any Gmail. Do you know where if there's some stats on it?
No, there aren't really stats
Somewhere.
on this, and but the theory is pretty clear. What happens is that there are two sides to DMARC. The sender, which in this case was Yahoo and then AOL, publishes a request to the recipient to reject the messages. Gmail, bless their don't be evil hearts, were not evil this time. They, first of all, have checked whether something's a known list or not, and they pass those through, although they put them in spam.
Yeah, yeah, that's what happened.
Also, they have a reject message that specifies that it was a DMARC policy, which we don't implement a reaction to that yet, but very soon we'll be able to ignore those. On the other hand, Hotmail and many other domains implement DMARC on the receiving side, and they simply did what Yahoo wants, which is to reject the mail. It shows up as a bounce, and people get disabled and sometimes unsubscribed.
Yeah.
So, but we can fix the so-called from alignment problem by getting Yahoo out of the from. Those are the options that we already have. And we should be able to fix the bounce problem, but that's a little harder because there's no standard DMARC bounce.
Yeah.
And so we can't tell the difference between a DMARC bounce and some kind of breakage on the receiver's side.
Okay.
So a lot of progress has been made. And if you can update to 2.1.18-1, there was a bug in 2.1.18 itself, so you really need the absolute most recent. And if you can update to that, turn on the relevant things in the site file, and then you should be in pretty good shape.
So how is 3.0 coming along? That has the GUI, doesn't it?
3 is not really doing anything about this kind of stuff right now because it's in beta. For example, if I use it, all of my users are sophisticated. They don't use Yahoo. And they can handle things like encapsulated messages. So even if they did use Yahoo, I could use something that's fully RFC compliant and not have a problem. And that's basically the case with all the beta testers so far. So Barry hasn't done anything about implementing DMARC avoidance in Mailman 3 yet. There is a package out which makes installation easier. I haven't tried it yet. One of our mentors, Abhilash Raj, has done so, and he had some problems. It's being improved, and we expect beta testing to really ramp up in the next month or so. But of course, everybody's tired. It's post-PyCon, you know.
I know.
And you don't get to rest?
I don't get to rest either. I'm out on the West Coast in Palo Alto this week, and we have an awards banquet tomorrow that we have annual. It's a annual awards banquet. And then I fly back on Friday, and so it's an all-day thing Friday. Coming from West Coast to East Coast. By the time I get home, it's probably 1 a.m. Saturday morning. So crazy schedule, but that's life. You know, that's life.
So
Okay.
Iris has a question about the requirements, it looks like.
Yes, Irish, go ahead. We're all ears. company, employer, contact ABIs. It's just me. Yes, it is all manual. Every step that we do in the process currently is all manual, and it's usually calling them usually an email. So let me give you an example. So one of our volunteers, she is on the committee. She's chairing the GH committee, community committee this year. And so she is very relentless about making sure that she enters in her volunteer hours every week internally with her company. And their system actually automatically sends out an email to our finance department, which is our operations, and then our operations sends me an email and says, "Hey, can you approve or verify this this volunteer and her hours?" Then I go back and it goes back through that cycle. Yes, approved, and then she goes back and she sends it back to the volunteer that company. And so that's the cycle. There's no automation right now, and that's what we want. Because if I don't, if she can't get me, they have a certain time too that they have to submit. So the volunteers does exactly what she's supposed to do, but sometimes I'm the person that's stalling because I'm not always available at that second or at that day or week or something like that. And sometimes it falls through my crack too. So I don't want to be the one um, who who holds up everything. That's another thing. None of us do. So there is no automation in anything right now for us. It's all manual. It's a good question, and I know you needed to clarify that, but any other questions, Irish? Yes, she has one more. Good, good. I'm glad. And so Stephen, I was suggesting that the two main user scenarios that we have is from an administrative standpoint, which is like for me, and then from a volunteer standpoint perspective. So those are the two user scenario, and then the reporting is the third piece that really will finish it up, the basic. When a volunteer entered their hours onto the system, will an email message be automatically sent to their program manager that summarizes this information? That is a good idea. So when a volunteer enters her hours, that volunteer should get a confirmation email or have a way to configure or set that she wants to receive an email. But the program manager of that particular volunteer assignment should be notified, yes. And Stephen, another thing is that we have this administrator, right? And so I could potentially have a lot of volunteer coordinators, which I do. I have a lot of volunteer coordinators under me, and they are responsible oftentimes to make sure that they're volunteers, and it funnels up. So think about that in your design and when you're doing approval process as well, because there will have to be the approval process. The program, somebody has to approve the volunteer hours that are entered. And that you can't get away from the manual stuff. Somebody's got to check and say approve or denied or something like that, or more questions. Need more questions or something like that. This is good questions, Irish. Do you have more? And I want to repeat, you said summarizing information. That's a good point too. So there's a detailed information that should be able to sum up. We should be able to sum up. So that comes back to customizing the reporting features. If I could have the flexibility to do that, that's good. Who exactly are the administrators in VMS? It would be And you know, I use that term loosely here because of this particular project. But an administrator really is an IT person normally, or who manages all of this. But in this case, it's me. It's a program manager. I should be able to also gave, if you look at the levels, I did this with another project, but if there should be levels associated too. So I'm an administrator, and then my volunteer coordinator should have certain functionality that she can do, but as an administrator, I should be able to assign what level that volunteer coordinator would be. If they come in as a user, they only have access to their account. But I didn't really put the volunteer coordinator or any type of level access and permissions in the requirements. But that's something you definitely should think about. And are the program managers and people in ABI Finance? Again, that's a good question too, because eventually, yes, right? If you look at that flow, the workflow, it's the, you know, hopefully someday in the future we'll have an API where the companies can just submit a request, and then that goes to the finance department. The finance department, I would say, have a level 4. So I have a level 5, they're a level 4, coordinators maybe a level 3. You might have, or a manager and then a coordinator at level 2, and then you volunteer is a level 1. And you know what? I will update the requirements document to detail that. I think that's an important piece to put in there. Thank you for asking that question.
Do you want that to be so hierarchical, or would there be like access control lists for each functionality that you could assign to people? So, for example, you might have two coordinators who are on different projects, but you trust them both and they trust each other. And so you
Good
might
point.
want to give Irish some permissions on my project and me some permissions on Irish's project and so on. This can be a lot more complicated, but it also gives you a way to build up functionality like that.
Yeah, that's true too. That's a great approach too. I didn't know if we wanted to go that detail here, but if we're going to take care of the permissions and access, we probably should really define it out now before rather than later. That's a good
Mhm.
point too. And and you're right, because we do have, even though they are volunteer coordinators, I actually do trust them to have more control like I do. So that's a good, yeah, let's take that approach too. Thanks, Stephen. I appreciate that. That's a really good approach. Good point. Good questions. And you know what? And it's so, these questions are really good because, you know, it helps me think, right? And that's the reason why I want to come back every 2 weeks and revisit and see what's going on and see what you're developing, because it helps me think about, you know, when you're doing requirements, I'm doing it down from a, you know, top level, top down approach of what's being done, but then it helps me visually see that there is some complex organizing that I do, and especially there are some volunteer coordinators that can handle a lot of the tasks that I have, and I totally give them that permission to do so. But then there are others that just are, you know, coming into the and want to just participate somehow. So these are really good questions. I appreciate it. Irish, anything else? Yes. All right. Okay. Basically, the purpose of running report is to allow the program manager, ABI Finance, to confirm the hours worked by a volunteer. Number one, yes. And these reports contain information about a volunteer's events attended, hours, total hours. Yes. So let's say that you worked at our awards banquet tomorrow. You know, we haven't really talked about the events So maybe our okay. Close the friend. We need to know but as from a program perspective, we definitely summary of event and to see I work much what, what see what you done throughout the year. So reporting. You guys still there?
Oh, you seem to be back again.
Okay. Okay, so let me repeat that last answer. So what was the question again?
Running reports.
Yeah, running reports. I can certainly spend some time on that because I haven't really thought those through, but I know what is always asked of me, and then I can actually put that as our default report because we definitely want default reports, but we also want to be able to customize. I want to be able to customize my reports. I want to be able to choose the fields. I want to be able to name that report if I need to. And you know, it could be a summary report, it could be more detailed, it could be by partner, so on. So I definitely want to be able to have some flexibility on that. But I'll spend some time on that. I'll spend some time on that too. I have a long flight home on Friday, so I'll definitely I have some time. Any more questions? These are really great questions, by the way, Irish. Okay, go ahead. I love that. What in the world is that? Oh, log off here. Okay. Do we need to implement from scratch a login functionality? You know, I'm sure there's already one created, I'm sure. So, you know, and that's the thing too, Stephen. You know, with open source, there's no way that we have to build something from scratch. We can reuse. Right? We definitely want to take what's already out there and just implement it on for this particular one. So if you can find something that's already implemented, especially with Python, I'm sure there's something out there already. Right, Stephen? I mean, there's no
Yeah.
reason to build the login functionality. I mean,
Yeah,
there's
there's a pile of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, use what's already existing, and it probably this whole entire thing is already, you got to piecemeal it together. I'm thinking, and then do some customizing, because I'm sure Python has some templates or something.
Yeah, the problem is going to be filtering out all the stuff on PyPy that's there for
Mhm.
Django, if that's what we're going to use.
Mhm.
The main thing that I would ask here is
Mhm.
how are your volunteers and administrators, how do they feel about single sign-on, like OpenID through Google and Yahoo and so on? If they
I'm all
want
for it.
that, we need to implement that.
I'm all for it, because when I don't even know when it was, but I noticed that with Google, I use a lot of their Google apps too, the Gmail and the Plus here and all of that. And then one day I just noticed I only had to do one sign on all the time, and I was like, wow, that's what I've been waiting for a long time. I'm all for it. If we can get the single sign on, that would be perfect. And I think, and really, from administrative task point, we're they're fine with whatever login. But from a volunteer, from our members, they are all, all for a single sign-on. They are the ones that really we want to make sure that we have some functionality in place. And I'm almost certain that most of them will want single sign-on. So that's great. I would definitely love that.
Okay, so on the one side, we can use OpenID, which means one password, but then we're also going to need to coordinate authentication stuff with the portal people and anybody else who's
Mhm.
got a login. So
Good. Good idea.
UM3, I think, is going to use Mozilla Persona, at least HyperKitty and Pastorius will.
Okay. That's a
So
good point.
that's something to think about.
And that was the thing that I wanted to do, was at some point I want to do two at some point during the summer, maybe towards the end, but maybe right after midterm, to bring the portal and the VMS together that we have, so we can talk about these things, right? Um, these type of things from a development perspective, you definitely want to have some synergy in what you're in your approach and your coding and things like that. So, Irish, that's a good point that Stephen makes, is that even though you're assigned to this, leverage your other fellow students. They may be working on something that you are probably going to need help with as well. Always push it to the list or IRC, and then make sure you're in parallel, you're in communication with Portal. And this is something that's standard in industry, because everybody can work on their own little projects and things, but then pulling it all together is the most complicated thing. And you don't want any surprises at the very end. You want to catch them at the beginning. It'll be easier, trust me. Right, Stephen?
Mm-hmm.
And this is a great exercise. If you've never done this before, and working with another team or another component and then bringing it all together, it's a great exercise. So that's a good question. Good question. Good question. Anything else? I put the Django down there because it was something that, when we actually did a poll of the students last year, it was something that a lot of the students really wanted to learn more about. You don't have to, but I'm learning Ruby on Rails, and I love the fact that they have the Rails framework for everything. But again, it's use your mentor's guidance on that. I have not used Django or implemented anything into Django either, so that's up to you guys. And I think the framework just provides all of the supporting stuff that you would have to. And so, with the framework, from my understanding, is that And that's something you want to work out with the portal team too. Don't forget about that. You know, if you are or you're not. Like, you guys decide as a team. And I just want to say, in design the right way. Teams work on separate things, but bringing them together to function as a common functionality is the most difficult thing. So always work with the portal team on that too. And Stephen has some great knowledge on this area as well. Stephen, have you worked with Django before?
Yeah, a little bit. I've worked with the Pastorius people a little bit on sprints, and HyperKitty also uses Django, so Mailman people are pretty familiar with that. Shanu used it last year.
Oh, good.
So yeah, it's pretty popular. Good. The other one that seems to be up and
good. She's on this team too, Irish. Yeah.
Yeah, the other one that's up and coming is called Pyramid, but it doesn't have
I
the.
lost you. Irish, is she still there? Hello? I see you again, Stephen. Move. Wait, say that again. What the other up?
So the up and coming one is called Pyramid, which addresses some modularity issues that Django has. On the other hand, it doesn't have all the add-ins and the level of experience that Django has out in the community. So, and then there are others, a whole bunch of others that can be done in Python. And then, of course, in the Ruby world, it's Rails. Ah.
Is everyone still there?
I'm still here.
Are you still there? Okay, great. I'm going to put my video back on, but if I lose connection again, I'm going to turn it off, because sometimes it's the streaming of the video. Hello?
Hello.
Hi, yeah, Stephen.
I'm here.
Okay. What's the up-and-coming one you mentioned?
It's called Pyramid.
Pyramid. I have never heard of that one. And it's used with Python?
It's a Python framework. It's quite similar to Django, but more modular. It's easier, for example, to use a different ORM. Django is kind of complicated to plug in Storm or what is it called? SQL Alchemy or something like that. But with Pyramid, it's much easier to do that kind of thing, mix and match components. On the other hand, it doesn't have all the add-ons that Django has yet.
Okay. Interesting. I've never heard of that one. Irish, do you have any other questions? I'm just on my
Oh. Uh,
Okay, that's a sign for me that says, let's take it to RSC, okay? I'll meet you in there. Thanks, though, for the great connection tonight. Appreciate it. Bye. Meet you in IRC. I'm stopping this now, okay?
which channel?
Bye.